Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It's Monday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Last week, Apple TV put out a crime thriller titled Dope Thief, starring Brian Tyree Henry and Wagner Moura as Ray and Manny, two lifelong friends who pose as DEA agents in Philly, conducting fake busts on small-time drug dealers for their money. Based on a novel by the same name by Dennis Tafoya, the series has been in the works for several years but got stalled up because of the writer's strike and on-set drama. And today we'll be discussing the first two episodes, Jolly Ranchers and Bat Out of Hell. So you watched the first two episodes, and from what it sounds like, the plot of this whole thing is kind of like these two criminals, petty criminals, are playing with fire.
Yeah.
Like, what could go wrong with them continually pissing off all these big-time drug dealers or the ones that were just, because they would go house to house, right?
Yeah, they would pose as DEA agents. And it almost reminded me of the film Let's Be Cops, where they impersonate police officers because they would impersonate DEA agents and then rob them. And so that's kind of like the Dexter moral compass, where it's like they're robbing drug dealers and only doing it enough so they can get by. That's how they
it's not
justify
exactly robbing from the rich to give to the poor, but robbing from the bad to give yourself more money.
Yeah.
Because obviously these two characters, Ray and Manny, they're not well off. Like, they have plenty of bills to pay for themselves.
I think Ray even says in the episode that this is his only source of income. I believe that Manny has a different job, but I forgot what it was. But yeah, this is something they do on the side.
I think Ray is posing as a painter.
Yeah,
at least to his mom.
paints
That's what
houses.
that's what he's telling her. But yeah, so they're playing with fire. What could go wrong? And in the end of the first episode, that's what really sets off the rest of the series. What does go wrong?
Well, so Rick, he's an ex-convict. They decide that they're going to take him in and try to get like a third person on, and he gives them a place, a house that he thinks is going to be an easy raid. However, this sparks a deadly shootout, and Ray and Manny barely escape with the money and drugs that were in the house, but Rick is completely dead. The four people inside the house are dead, or we think they're dead at least, until we learn later on that there was someone named Mina, an actual DEA agent who ended up surviving.
So that's part of the problem with trying to go into these layers, because you actually have some government officials who are ingrained and posing as drug dealers and stuff. So they end up, shooting one of those, and she survives. And so we see her later on in the second episode.
Yeah, she's nonverbal, but what really set off was Rick was not prepared for this thing. They tell Rick before they enter this house, we do not shoot our guns. Like, that is just something that shouldn't happen. And Rick, I don't know. I think that it's up in the air as if he shot the person who was in front of him on purpose or if it was just an accident. But he ends up dying. The person he shot ends up dying. It's this huge, massive shootout. And Manny and Ray then decide to take all of the money and all of the drugs that were in the house because this house is literally about to explode. It's on fire at this point.
And you see the explosion.
Yep.
And then the episode 2, though, they have the money. When does it become clear that people are after them?
By the end of episode 1.
What happens?
So this was I'm jumping right into my cons because this is my problem. It's true that people died, so maybe they were out just for revenge. But in all of this chaos, Manny ends up dropping his walkie-talkie. And we see that the villain picks it up. Ray still has his when they're in the car. And the villain, we never see him throughout the first 2 episodes, but he's on the walkie-talkie.
I think it's Ving Rhames, but I'm not sure.
He has the voice for it. But the villain literally says, drop the money. Like, drop the drugs, get them out of your car, tell me where you are, and you will survive. And they just decide to completely ignore the advice. And it would be something if Manny and Ray maybe didn't take the villain seriously. But the first words out of Ray's mouth after the villain gives him this proposition is, this guy's the real deal. And episode 2, they're trying to give the money and the drugs back anyways. So it didn't make sense why they decided to ignore his warning. Now, again, people are dead that he probably hired. So there is that. Maybe they thought he was lying, but that seemed like a pretty easy deal.
And it was the amount of money that they weren't used to getting, right?
Yeah.
They were used to running away with less than $10,000 each run.
Yeah.
And in this, it was like a Breaking Bad amount of money.
Yeah, they had like hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think.
Yeah, so that's probably part of the greed that went into them not doing it. But by episode 2, it's made pretty clear that not only does the bad guy know about them and is tracking them down, but also has figured out exactly where they live and who they're close to, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the bad guy even said that that's what was going to happen. He'd be able to find them in their Scooby-Doo van is one of the lines that he says. So it's like, I just was confused because it's like this whole entire series seems just kind of pointless because they could have just, at least if I was in that situation, I probably just would have dropped the money, dropped the drugs, and just left because it's very clear that Ray and Manny realize they're in a bad situation.
So you got to think about this. So Ving Rhames possibly is the big bad, and he was in control of this one house that they tried to rob, and
Right.
it went so badly. But there was already DEA agents within that house.
I think there was 2 of them, I
Yeah.
believe, and I think one of them is dead, and then Mina is the other one.
Yeah, so they were already hot on the lead. So not only is Brian Tyree Henry or Ray and Manny, are they both having to outrun these people who are trying to kill them, but also they have to, I assume, outrun the DEA pretty soon.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we get some scenes here and there just kind of showing Mina in the hospital, but I'm assuming, especially with where we left off in episode 2, that's when the chase with the DEA is also going to happen. Like, the actual DEA is coming after them.
Between the first 2 episodes, you like the first one the most because you didn't have as many cons, or the second one? Bad Out of Hell.
It's
Bad Out of Hell is the name of the second
okay,
episode.
yeah. I would say maybe episode 1, but it's hard because both episodes I felt like kind of had the same problem. Yes, there's intense fight scenes. Yes, Brian Tyree Henry and Wagner Moura are good in their roles, but the show tries to be too many things in the 90 minutes. They like smash it full of just different genres and tones. At first, in the first episode, it seems like it's going to be a weird, dark buddy comedy where these people, almost like Pulp Fiction, are just kind of doing whatever they want. They're
Ving
outlaws.
Rhames, Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, and then a crime show. Oh, I actually didn't make that connection, but yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
And then a crime show, like that's what it seems like it wants to be. A soap opera with some of the flashbacks that they have that
Yes.
thankfully are short, but don't really play
Hey, if I told you 8 episodes, Philly-centric, bleak atmosphere, flashback-filled crime drama, we're talking Long Bright River.
But there's even, yes, no, that's true. But there's even horror in the second episode. Like, it seems like they're kind of going like the NBC Hannibal route. And then a mystery, a drama, an action series. It just should focus on the latter 2. And I believe Ving Rhames, actually, if that's who I'm thinking it is, actually plays Bart. And I think that's
Yes.
Ray's dad.
Oh,
Ray's dad,
so the
yes.
evil person, okay, people are going to be mad on the podcast then. So the villain is actually going to be someone totally different.
Yes, I did. Again, we never see them, but no, Bart. Yeah, that's Ray's dad who has cancer, and he was abusive to Ray. And we learned that the reason why Ray needed $10,000 because the adoptive mom, Theresa, said that she needed that money in the first episode was really actually to let Bart out of jail early.
Yeah.
Because he has such advanced cancer, he doesn't want to die in jail.
But just like in LA Suits or Suits LA, the guy really doesn't like his dad.
Uh-huh.
And he literally wants him to die from the cancer that he has. That
Yes.
But he's very close to, like you were talking about, almost like in Bookie, I would think their friendship is.
I had Bookie here also. Yeah,
a certain amount of
comparisons.
codependency. And so when the bad guy threatens the dad, Brian Tyree Henry is, or Ray is like, you stop flirting with me. Like, I love that idea.
Uh-huh.
But when he goes after the friend, he's like, okay, man, I'll give you everything you want.
Any connection with the dad and any reason why Ray wants to save him is purely because the mom is still kind of in contact with him. There's no other reason.
What'd you think of the mom's character, like compared to the Penguin mom, or like there's always a matriarch?
It reminded me too much of the Penguin's mom, except she doesn't really
She's
have
not evil.
She
right?
doesn't have Alzheimer's. No, and Ray tells her. In fact, Ray I think is one of the characters' name in Bookie, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. But Ray tells the mom to actually go to Las Vegas because he's afraid, even by the beginning of episode 2, that the villain is going to be able to find them.
And at the same time, she's having him set up with a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Like, what exactly is going on with that? So while he's dodging people trying to kill him and his friends,
so that's the lawyer that might be able to get their father out of jail.
Yes.
Due to his cancer.
Okay. So did you pay any attention to like directors, screenwriters, like anybody,
No, I didn't see
showrunners?
anything.
Okay. So Ridley Scott was the one who directed the first episode. Pretty big name. Peter Craig is actually the show's creator as well as the writer. He also directed, I think, the last episode. You know him from The Town, the Hunger Games, like Mockingjay, those two.
Okay.
The Batman, Top Gun Maverick, Gladiator 2. That's where he
So
met
he has
up
quite the
with.
repertoire.
Well, I mean, The Town was where he got his kickoff because everybody expected that movie to just be sort of a random crime heist movie, and then it took off and had it like really popular. So Ridley Scott and him teamed up on Gladiator 2, and it's funny because Peter Craig said he watched a lot of Mad Men to write for this show. You talked about it being busy, but he wanted to write it so that like the characters had interweaving dialogue so that it was like fast paced and I guess a little less Sorkin and more just like Mad Men-ish.
Well, it was a lot more comedy than I expected, but it just felt out of place. Like, yes, there were a couple jokes here and there that I found funny, but it happens at the weirdest moments. And for a show that is pretty serious, it's kind of weird that it was just there, like in the background.
Well, Ridley Scott wanted to maintain a feeling of eternal dusk throughout the series. In the first scene that I did see, it did remind me a little bit of The Wire, but they had the production team watch Fargo to give it that sort of bleak atmosphere. Again,
and Fargo is a comedy, right? I mean, in certain ways.
Yeah, but he was talking more about how he wanted it to look like The Wire. That's why a lot of headlines have been like, is this Apple's Breaking Bad, Apple's The Wire? It does seem like they put a lot of effort into trying to make it look really cool. They shot in Philly, unlike with Long Bright River. And I just want to give you a small idea of how much it costs. So there's been expensive pilots out there, right?
Yeah.
Since Lost. But I'm going to give you a game where I will tell you the amount that it cost and also the name of the show. And you stop me when you think that we've reached where Dope Thief hits.
Okay.
And if you don't get there, we'll end up just
I know the Acolytes pilot wasn't that like a lot of money, but
yeah, I don't have that one listed here as one of the options, but okay. $12.5 million for Mando. The Mandalorian,
okay.
16.5 for The Get Down, 17 plus for One Piece, 20 million for Terra Nova. Now I think that was a 90-minute pilot.
So these are just for the pilots, right?
Yeah, and some of them are like this is not 100% confirmed because I saw it written in some articles, but nothing from like big papers.
Okay.
But 25 million for Westworld. You still think it's more than that? 30 million for Vinyl.
I'm going to stop you there because I haven't seen Vinyl, but 30 million is a lot.
30 million. Vinyl had the most expensive pilot for many years, and then like Secret Invasion and Citadel and all those come out. But no, not yet. So Secret Invasion, 35 million.
Okay.
Citadel, 50 million an episode.
I know with Citadel was $300 million. That was the full budget, and they made 6 episodes. So I still think that's correct.
Yes. And that's where it is. It's estimated around 50 million. Apparently, they shot in a real town, but they also made enough of the town. Like they rented it out, and then they blew up that building that you saw blow up was an actual blown up building. $50 million episode. People are still questioning, like, this doesn't seem like it equates. Do you feel that way?
So $50 million for this, you're saying?
For this pilot.
That seems crazy to me. Because
they did a 5 on-set camera crews for one action scene. So, like, instead, in movies and television, usually you get, like, 2 or 3 cameras for the big action scenes.
Yeah.
This was 5 on-set cameras. They had, like, 250 background people.
I mean, the cinematography was fine. I was even going to say there's a part where... The Mank?
No, Mank was the cinematographer, the guy who did Mank.
Yeah. But okay, and that kind of gives the Amanda Seyfried connection. But yeah, no, I was going to say that Bart, he gives the name of Danny Loebsack, and they end up going to, in the second episode, so Ray and Manny go to Danny Loebsack's place, and I thought that the best looking part was that action scene. I think there was even like snow there, and I thought that looked pretty cool. But this is definitely, this feels like a Wolf situation where it's like, how'd you have that much money, but give what just kind of felt like a standard TV show? I understand.
Did it feel like a standard TV show?
I mean, I understand that it's Apple TV Plus, and you definitely don't usually have 2 people play DEA agents.
I don't want to weigh too much in my opinion, but it did feel like whenever I tuned into parts of it where like there was a huge action scene going on, it was very well done. Like it seemed like it was a pretty good.
Like I said, the action is shot well. There's some intense parts to it, but it just feels like there was too much that it was trying to be in so little time. And again, when you try to take into the fact that the villain just wanted his drugs and money back, and that was it, it makes the show feel unnecessary.
By the second episode, when they volunteered to do that, he said, "You're all gonna die."
But why even wait till the second episode to do that? That was one of my cons as well. It's like that's the choice they were given at the end of the first episode. And Ray says
risks. It's like you can either walk away sort of Squid Game-ish with this tons of money and risk having to be on the run for the rest of your life, or you can hope that the drug dealer is being honest with you when he says just drop it and I'll let this go. Like there's no guarantee that he would have done.
My thing was this. I didn't believe, because the drug dealer does say, tell me where you are. I would have just left it on the road, been like, it's there, because then there really would have been no other reason for it. The drug dealer even says that the story that they made with the people dead inside the house is probably going to be able to fool the cops.
Fool the cops, but doesn't fool him. He already knows what happened. He realizes that these guys, for more or less, had just killed 4 of his people. I don't think he was going to just let them go, even if he had to trick them into saying, hey, I'll let it all slide if you hand me the money.
I think it was 3 of his people.
The 4th being the lady who ended up surviving.
No, but Rick was the one that actually died. That's what I think made it 4.
My point is, again, you have to trust this guy who in the 2nd episode makes it very clear that he's a vindictive son of a bitch. Like, I don't think that they necessarily made the wrong mistake by not doing it the more that we talk about it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, even with that, it just, for the show itself, didn't feel like it knew what it wanted to do. Like, we deal with so much with Bart's storyline, but it seems like the only time that it actually even ended up coming into play was when he gives them the Danny Loebsack name. The reason he gives that name...
Bart's just the dad.
The reason he gives that name, though, is because they're thinking that Bart only spoke of his son, Ray, once in jail. So they're thinking maybe Rick had some type of connection there, and that's how this whole entire thing got started. Because there's so much mystery in the show as well. Like, how did Rick get into the group? Why did they trust him?
Well, no, that was kind of explained, I think. And you know how Manny and Ray met? They met in juvie.
Yeah.
So I think he was just one of the people in juvie.
Ex-convict, yeah.
Yeah, so then he ended up being a real con and going to jail, and then he got out, and they were like still friends with him because of their time in juvie, just like
but they're wondering. They were also wondering, I think, if Rick had any connection to Danny Loebsack as well.
Yeah, you're getting deep into like what the main reason of how these evil dudes. Did you not enjoy though when they like started fighting the Texas dudes, or what are the motorcycle gang?
That was the scene I was talking about.
Yeah,
they go to Danny Loebsack's residence, and then they end up. That's when the shootout happened. Yeah. That was cool, but I guess felt like the show was trying to do too much with too little time.
Compared to Brian Henry's other show that you reviewed, the Class of 09.
Class of 09.
Yes.
Yeah, I had that. I think that this is better than that, because the Class of 09 tried to go like some weird futuristic route where he's actually trying to be a cop. And I remember the 2 episodes of that were even slower than this, but I still can't give this show a passing grade. I'm going to have to give it like a 5 out of 10.
Surprising. I thought, from the scenes I saw, I thought it was a really good show. And from the reviews, it seems like people were not dissuaded by the first few episodes, but maybe the latter half of the series where it loses a little steam.
I will say, I think that Pennsylvania is 100% better portrayed than it was in Long Bright Road. Long Bright Road, for me, it looked like New York City, which I know is where they filmed. Here, I know you said that they actually filmed in Pennsylvania, but it seemed like it was Pennsylvania.
All right. Well, it has an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 7.6 on IMDb, a 73 on Metacritic. Again, it's got pretty good reviews. I just off the top of my head wanted to compare it to like This Fool, the friendship angle between like Jesse and Walter, Danny and Ray. So it's Danny and Ray in Bookie and Manny and Ray in this.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of confused.
No, the Ray thing makes sense, but the Danny and Manny, I didn't even put that together. That's crazy. And then also Sam and Dean. I would also compare it to Mr. In Between, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I think the Mr. In Between is fair with kind of the comedy and the drama, but my question is more, you're not going to be able... I as much as I'm going off on the show for trying to do too many things, I did enjoy the first scene with Ray and Manny where they decided to act like DEA agents and kind of rob the first house. But I don't think you're going to get that much more of that in this series, because at this point, it's just about them trying to evade the law and this mysterious
villain. You didn't
like
the humor of him like not knowing where the ringtone was from, and then at the end of the episode, the lawyer just being like, "Why do you?"
Yeah, no. The Meatloaf song.
Why do you have a Meatloaf song?
That was yeah.
Okay. For me, that worked. For you, it did not. So the 70s crime movies that they were looking at trying to like channel a little bit, Chinatown, Dog Day Afternoon. I will tell you, one of the big stories behind the set was that they had originally cast someone else to play the Wagner Moura character. And so that was Michael Mando, the guy from like Better Call Saul. And he's done a bunch of stuff, but like he apparently got onto some on-set drama where there was a physical alteration and with some person, so he got fired. And then they had to bring in Wagner Moura. The last thing I'll say is that Brian Tyree Henry, a little bit of trivia about him is he got one of his starts in Broadway. He was in the original Book of Mormon, and he played a character called the General.
So he knows how to sing. I guess Paperboy and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's done all sorts of things, Shakespearean acting to Atlanta to we've seen him in those goofy, dumb comedies with like James Corden or whatever his name is, and so he seems like he's across the map. This and Atlanta, I think, are his best, like where I believe him as a character the most.
I was going to say, I feel like he's playing, and obviously different variations here and there, but always just Paperboy in a certain type of job, whatever that is.
Fair, because I mean, in the goofy comedies, he plays goofy. Like I've said, even in Room 104, he did a good job.
Yes, no, Room 104 was different, but I'm thinking more like Bullet Train. Like he just felt like an assassin who was Paperboy.
Interesting. I mean, I don't think he's been typecast necessarily. In fact, I think the opposite. But yeah, so Jolly Ranchers Bat Out of Hell, that's our review. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.